Welcome back, EP Network, to another episode of EP Talks. This is your host, founder, and CEO, Andre Wicks, and I'm here with a great friend, Randy Russell, Superintendent of Freeman School District in Freeman, Washington. And Randy, we joked the second time we tried to record this, and here we are making a third attempt, but the third time is the charm. It just means that this episode is going to be 3 times as valuable. So, Randy, welcome back.
Thanks, Andre. And I know that the third time is going to be the charm. We've had a chance to practice a couple times, so we know we're bringing our best stuff for your listeners, right?
Right. Well, this is another 30 minutes or less, and you know the routine. We're just going to get after it and try to add some value to the life of the school principal. So I'm going to ask you the first question right here. You've been in the business for a long time, and we just want to know from your perspective, what is the current state of school leadership? I want to ask you this question because if you're reading the news or if you're watching the news, it could give you a jaded perspective of the K-12 sector. So give us your perspective.
Thanks, Andre. Well, certainly, and you know this because you're living it as a principal. You know, this is probably one of the most, if not the most difficult and challenging times for a building principal. And there's been a lot of transition and a lot of flux, with leadership, right? We have seen across the nation a huge turnover in principal leadership. A lot of people going right from the classroom into a principal position, not even going into an assistant principal position, going right into a principal position. And so with that flux, comes a huge opportunity, right, for a great chance of a great teacher to go into an admin role, somebody who is willing to stay in it for a little while to get some consistency and be able to get some really great momentum. And I think that's what you and I are seeing is that the leaders that are staying in it, they're creating a tremendous amount of momentum. They're really creating these great relationships with their kids, that they're serving, with the staff that they have, with their families. And so the work is even more rewarding, I think, Andre, even with the flux, even with the transition, because when you get a great one, you want to hang on to them. And, that's certainly what Spokane has done with you. I know that's what we've done in Freeman, right? We've got a great group of principals, and a couple of us have been together for 14 years. 2 other of the principals have been in their now in their 4th year. And it's challenging, it's difficult, but it's also extremely rewarding. And we have to really do a great job of taking care of our building leaders, because we know that just like on a bus, the bus driver plays such a huge role, right, in what's happening. And the cheese wagon is just a big classroom on wheels, right? And then what's happening, with teams, bands, choirs, it's really, that leadership rises and falls with the coach or the instructor. And we know that same thing happens in a building, right? For you, with your staff and your kids and your team, everything rises and falls with your leadership, Andre, and we know that about building leaders. So let's make sure we're providing them with a ton of support, even if it is challenging and even when it is in flux a little bit, because that extra support for building leaders goes a long ways.
I think you've hit on so many valuable points right there, and it makes me think about the idea of growth. You've talked about providing a lot of support. You want your leaders to be able to adapt and grow and evolve with the reality of what this role is and is constantly becoming. And something you said makes me think about the messaging that I provide my staff. And this is the truth. I tell my staff often that the things that I'm bringing to the table for them are actually an experiment that I've practiced on myself first. And I think that if you can put something in front of them that you believe is going to be of value to them personally and professionally, It's kind of like when you go to Trader Joe's. So Trader Joe's in the Pacific Northwest is a co-op grocery store, and it's amazing. But what they have is this guarantee that everything that is on the shelf, they've tried it. And that's how they know the products are good. And so similar to that, that's how I go about putting professional development in front of my staff. These ideas of continuous improvement are things that I've actually tried on myself. And it's that internal drive. It's kind of like the book by Dan Pink titled Drive, around the theory of motivation, that there has to be purpose, autonomy, and opportunities for mastery. And when you do that, you'll be inspired to grow. And when you do that, people are inspired to grow. I actually tell my staff, if in your tenure you feel like you want to stay in this school and continue to grow this place, that's amazing. But if you feel like you've outgrown this place, that's amazing too.
And great leaders, their teams are going to change, Andre. Because if we're doing our job in terms of coaching, mentoring, and supporting teachers, staff, leaders, then our staff's going to change because those folks are going to go into new leadership roles and they may even leave the building or the district. I know for us, we have, 3 individuals that were either teachers or principals here in Freeman who are now superintendents in Eastern Washington. And I loved working with them, and great guys, great teammates, great, collaborative team players, but they just got to that point where they were ready for the next challenge. And now, they're leading Cheney and leading Newport and leading Loon Lake. And we know that this is a huge part of our calling, our responsibility, right, is to grow and mentor and coach our staff so they can step up in their career and they can lead and impact, in a much bigger, broader way.
That's great. Yeah. And speaking of growth, speaking of continuous improvement, some of the things that you've done, and I think this is important. I think it's important to have things outside of your building or outside of your district that inspire and motivate you. And maybe there's a direct correlation back to the work that you do from 9 to 5, and maybe there isn't, and that's okay too, but it's encouraging, this idea of continuous learning. And you've done some things that are awesome. You are impacting the Freeman community, but you're also impacting our country. You are speaking, you are consulting, you're training. You've written the book, The 3 Ships, which I highly recommend. And so what I want you to share with the EP network is based off of the work that you've done and the places that your work and your book have made an impact. What do you see other districts and states focusing on?
Yeah. Well, you're really talking about the term Kaizen, Andre, which is around continuous improvement. And we know it's a cycle, right? It's plan, do, assess and reflect, adjust, plan, do, assess and reflect, adjust. And if you keep on that continuous cycle of improvement, you're going to continue to get better and you're going to find a way to keep yourself sharp. And as educators, I strongly believe that we have to reinvent ourselves every year, right? Stick with the core things that you know are working. But then also, if you're going to ask staff and kids to get out of their comfort zone when it comes to learning and improving their skills, then you have to be the lead model to step out of that comfort zone. And when you do the continuous improvement cycle, you can become a speaker, an author, a podcaster, a consultant. And what we're finding right now is there's more of a need than there are enough people to fill that need. Because of this transition and flux and because of the turnover, there's a lot of new folks into the principalship and even the superintendency. And principals are your future superintendents for the most part. There are some superintendents that come out of the business world, but 95, 98% of them are coming right out of the classroom through the principal pipeline into the superintendency. And what I'm seeing across the nation is this need is not going to slow down. There's going to continue to be a need to provide great podcasts, great resources for somebody like yourself as a lifelong learner and a lead educator to go share your experiences, right? Your knowledge, what you've been through, because you have your own story, Andre, and sharing that story is hugely important. I remember you as a college student when I was working at Whitworth and you were there and you came up and you were epitome of the student athlete. And I remember you coming in as a freshman and what you learned between your freshman and sophomore year was the same difference of what you learned between your sophomore and junior year. And then by the time you got to be a senior, you had really built a great college experience for yourself, your teammates, the coaches that you were a part of, right? And it's kind of like, growing a garden. You got to put in great soil. You got to put in your seed and fertilize it and water it and weed it, and all that's part of a continuous improvement cycle. And I think when you take that mentality and you work with other groups of people, it's a double win. So you're not just helping the people that you're working with, but you're also learning and growing yourself. So when you come back to the school, or I come back to the school district, because we went and worked with the group, we're actually able to do a better job in our leadership roles. And I think that's the benefit of working with a wide variety of group of people.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much, and it is so true. And it's interesting because I've been in environments where I have this desire to step out and continuously improve, even if it seems like there's not a tangential connection to the work I'm doing in the classroom or the work that I'm doing in the building, and it's actually discouraged. And I don't know what the barrier is. And it's actually making me think about the next question that I want to ask you. Are we focusing on the right things across the board in K-12 ed? And the reason why I ask that is this: as long as K-12 education has been in existence, there's been varying degrees of what we call quote unquote success. Successful buildings, successful students, successful leaders. But when you look at whatever the criteria are that would identify success, why are there differences? You are talking about things in terms of leadership that don't only apply to school leadership. These are just universal practices that are good across all sectors. So why isn't it happening everywhere?
Yeah, well, it definitely comes down to leadership, Andre. There's no doubt about that. And I think what's happened is when you match great leaders with a very clear focus on what's in the best interest of students, you've got a high chance for success. And where it can get a little murky or where you can kind of get off track a little bit is when you're having to deal more with the adults than you are really focused in on what's best for kids. So I think when you see a high performing school, you have a staff that is focused in on what's best for the kids, and you're also taking care of the staff. And a perfect example of that is at a high school when you put your best teachers teaching algebra and physical science and English 9 with incoming ninth graders, knowing that ninth grade is such a key point and a key start for a successful high school experience. But where do we see most of the really good, top-notch high school teachers? They're teaching seniors. Yep, they're teaching AP, they're teaching the advanced classes. And not to say that the kids can't benefit from that, because they certainly do. But what's to say a high school science teacher can't teach 3 periods of physical science and 2 periods of AP, right? And so I think the leadership really can help the staff stay focused on, are we making decisions based on what's best for kids, or are we doing this to help kind of massage the adults? And I know that I've even gotten myself in trouble before as a leader when I've said, is this about the kids or is this about the adults? Because this to me seems like this is an adult issue, that this isn't really about the kids. And some people don't like that, Andre. But I believe when you connect both of those, you're going to be in a great place for success.
Well, and that goes down to not only teaching assignment, but I love that you bring up that point around purpose, really. You know what I mean? It's like whether you're a coach, a teacher, a building principal, a parent, whatever the leadership role is, what's the purpose and what's the intended outcome? Once that's agreed upon, then every decision you make, it should be crystal clear that it's to move that mission forward. Whether you're talking about master schedule or if you're talking about your systems and protocols, even around bathroom use, everything points toward either helping us or holding us back from accomplishing our ultimate goal.
Yeah, and whether it's cell phones or hats or how you're going to take care of attendance, tardies, all of those things become part of the leader's daily script for success. And when staff isn't on the same page around a policy or how they're going to implement that with their procedures, right, that's what makes it difficult for a principal. So teacher A has one set of rules for cell phone use right next to the classroom of teacher B, and they have a different expectation around cell phone use. Then the building leader has to come in and wear the white hat and bring the whistle out and officiate, right? And you back to really highly performing schools, staffs that are on the same page and are consistent in their expectations and what they're going to tolerate and allow and what they're not going to tolerate and allow drives out a huge part of that culture too, Andre.
Okay, let's make things interesting here. We're going to go off script a little bit. I want to talk to you a little bit about being able to create a shared vision. And so you and I are talking about right now the anchor that you're always turning your attention back to, whether it's a systems change or a first order change. You've gone out and you've helped other schools and school districts across the country. You've been in a variety of settings, even within Washington State. So, what has been your process of being able to successfully create shared vision?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, first of all, it starts with the mindset that you want to work within a team and that you want to, second of all, be coached. You want to be coachable. And when you want to work in a team, a successful team, and you want to have a coachable spirit, Andre, your chance of being able to drive that culture and have that impact and influence just goes through the roof. And just on a personal note, right, unfortunately, there's been a shooting in Georgia. What's my role to help? We'll be part of the AASA Superintendent Recovery Network, right, which helps, school superintendents navigate from the minute that a traumatic crisis happens through the road of recovery. And that's where you can get with people, work on a team, and pull people together. And, everybody wants to be part of a winning team. They really do. They want to be part of a successful grade level, a successful department. They want to be leading a successful building. And when you're working together, and one of my favorite, movies and books is The Boys in the Boat, the story about the University of Washington, rowing team. And it really is about getting your oars, into the water, working in sync. It's about getting the people in the right locations, in that boat. And then it's about having somebody that can help, work with the team so you can get going as fast as you can. And it reminds me a little bit, Andre, of the old saying, which is really what's in the way is the way. What's in the way is the way. So whatever's in front of you, whatever that barrier is, whatever that challenge is, when you're doing it with a team of people, you can get through it. You can get over that barrier. When you're trying to tackle it yourself, and I think that's what gets young building leaders in trouble, is that they're not afraid, or they're afraid to slow it down. They're afraid to say, I don't know. Well, I'm in my 37th year and somebody will ask me a question, Andre, and I'll be like, I don't know. That is a great question. I need to do some digging. Give me 24 hours. I'll look into it and I'll get back to you. But having, this opportunity, pick the phone up, phone a friend, You talk to your principal colleagues. I talk to my superintendent colleagues. When you're working on an issue, 4 or 5 heads are always better than one. And I think that's what drives out that collaborative, successful culture, and why people are asking for your podcast or for me to come speak, or they want to partner with somebody because they know it's a team sport. And when you're working as a team, you just have a lot better chance for success. Oh, I just love being with you, buddy. I'm so proud of you. You've done an amazing job, and it's just been fun to watch your career. And now look at the impact and the influence that you're having, with your speaking and your writing, your podcast, what you're offering, because we all need a coach. We all need support, whether you're in your first year or whether you're in your 40th year.
That's right. And I think that the goal is that someone is listening to this because they want to improve. I think back and I wish that when I was going through college and first coming out of Whitworth, and I'm sad to say this a little bit because it's going to reveal my age, but there was no such thing as a podcast. But first year principals coming out now that are listening to this podcast, this episode right now could be the thing that helps you turn a curve. And to be honest with you, like you said, it could be someone in their 40th year that has felt stuck in a rut and needs that helping hand to pull them out of that rut. And this conversation right here could be that thing that helps them out. So I want to finish up with this question. You've already given us so many nuggets that any one of these things a principal could take away and add value to their practice. But this is my wrap-up question. What is one thing for a principal to start doing and keep doing forever?
Yeah, great question. Well, as we have visited through the years, and I hope I did a good job of this as a college, professor and as a coach when you were a student, but when you're visible, you're valuable. And as a principal, when you're visible, you're valuable. When you're in the hallways during passing time, when you're out greeting kids and families in the morning, when you're in the lunchroom, when you're in a classroom, checking in on a staff member, a teacher, and the kids, when you're at an after school, activity, or you're going to the band concert, that's to me is when the principal is the most valuable, is when they're visible. Because you can check email and you can work in your office all day long. But in my mind, Andre, that's not where you're the most valuable at. And there's a place and a time for that. So picking your spots and knowing where you should be, when you should be there, I think is critically important for the success of a principal in this day and age. And I think that one thing that principals should stop doing is don't be in a rush to give an answer. Somebody comes in, hey, you got 2 minutes, Andre? Which is 15 minutes. And they've got 15 minutes and they're going to drop off a quick problem or a question. And I think what we have seen is that the principals who can slow it down a little bit, take some time to do a little more digging, really think it through from all sides, weigh it all out, and be able to slow people down, usually end up making a lot better decisions. And I think people respect the fact that a principal was willing to slow it down, take some time and think it through, and that you showed some real credence to that person's question or problem can go a long ways to helping people be successful as a building leader.
This is going to be an episode that people bookmark, Randy. I love it.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm just so proud of you, buddy, and so honored to be with you. And I hope we get to do it again. Just one final thought for any principal is if you want to go fast, go by yourself. And if you want to go far, go with your team.
And we are going to end with that. That's perfect. Randy, thank you so much for being part of this process. I'm wishing you all the best with the rest of your school year at Freeman.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Thanks for having me, Andre. Appreciate you.
All right. Take care. Thank you for listening to EP Talks. EP Talks is the official podcast for Everyday Principal. Everyday Principal is the leading learning management system focused on principal development. Assets within the LMS include EP Talks, the EP Blog, the EP Collaborative, groups and forums on the most relevant topics in K-12 education, EP University, customized courses and programs aligned with your school district's strategic plan, EP Publishing, opportunities to author and write for Everyday Principal, and EP Microlearning, opportunities for bite-sized learning. Each asset within the EP LMS is an opportunity for you to grow and earn continuing education credits or clock hours. Contact us today for more information.